What's going on YouTube? Shokio here. As you can see, I'm in my car because I'm about to go back home so I can hang out with BBC before he goes back to Chicago. But yeah, before I get started, for those of you who think I'm the, yeah, and this is going to sound crazy to a lot of my subscribers, but yeah, some people are thinking this is the channel of the Super Saiyan kid, when really just some troll whose mind I completely own. He put my link in the description of, he said, this is my channel. This is the guy in the video, go to his channel and spam it, whatever. Because, he's just that sensitive and butthurt over me. But yeah, guys, you got the wrong person, wrong channel. Stop spamming all my channel. Stop sending me PMs about how I could reach, Super Saiyan 3 status and stuff. I've actually gotten PMs about that. But, yeah. Anyways. PS Vita Impressions. I went to GameStop last week after getting a haircut, and I checked out the Vita. Firstly, let's talk about it from just like a physical standpoint. How it looks and stuff like that. It looks really, it's like really slick. It's nice. It fits comfortably in your hands. But one thing I noticed is that it's kind of big, and by that I don't mean it's necessarily thick, but it's like wide and long, or longer wide, however way you want to say. It's like, it's kind of too big to fit in, in a typical pocket. That's one of the first things I noticed, like, right off the bat. Now, for me, and I'm sure for a lot of you, that's really not going to bother you much, because, if you love your Vita that much, if you love your handheld gaming system that much, you'll bring a little bag, whatever, a backpack or something to carry it in. I'm a college student, so, that's not going to be much of a problem for me, because, I'm always have my backpack on me, so I can just always carry it in my backpack. But for some of you, who may not always, who, aren't college students or students at all, might be a problem for you guys unless you have, big ass pockets. On the software side of things, I love the operating system. I'm so glad Sony dropped the XMB. This one is just more fun to use. Of course, it's touchscreen enabled. And, like, just the way it's set up, I could definitely tell that there's going to be, like, a bunch of apps on the way. It's going to be really awesome. It's going to be cool. Like I said in my previous videos, the thing that has me most excited about the Vita is its, multimedia capabilities, and its functions and its features. Not necessarily, its graphical power or the games, but, everything else. That's what really has me excited the most. Now, let me talk about the buttons. The face buttons, the X, triangle, square, circle, they feel great. They feel nice. But I don't know if it's just me, but they are way too small. Like, they are way too small for my liking. Like, when I have my thumb over one button, like, I'm covering up, like, other three buttons. You see what I'm saying? So, I don't know, it's just kind of weird. And, same goes for the analog nubs. The analog nubs, they are really small, and they are really loose feeling. And, like, that's really disappointing, because, I was excited to have, dual analog on my, handheld. But they didn't execute it right. And I understand, well, Shokio, it's a handheld system. They had to keep everything small. Well, I mean, no, they could have kept it the size of, the PSP, and they should have kept the slider on the PSP, in my opinion. Because also what you guys gotta understand is your PSP cases won't work with the Vita because of those joysticks. They stick out, and when you put them in your pocket, it's gonna feel weird and uncomfortable, and so trying to store your Vita, in those ways, that's going to wear out those sticks. But yeah, like I said, those sticks are way too small. Way too small for my liking. They need to make those bigger. And I was speaking with Dark Cloud before, and he told me that there's actually, like, a lot of empty space inside the Vita. Like, they're not even using up the whole shell. So they, so it's not a problem of, the problem isn't space or anything like that. I guess they just thought that would be a good size, but really I don't like the size of analog sticks. I don't like the size of the face buttons. The triggers, they kind of feel the same as the triggers on the PSP, except a little better. But nothing drastically, no drastic improvement. But they're fine. No complaints there. The D-pad, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I like it because it's nice and clicky. But the thing is, it's different from the D-pads on the PSP and on the DualShocks. You know how it's, the four and they're like separated or whatever? Well, the D-pad on the Vita, it's all stuck together. Kind of like a, Nintendo D-pad, sort of, kind of. You see what I'm saying? So you know, but it still feels great. It's just that some of you may not like that because, you know, you've been playing Sony systems this whole time like me. So you might not like that change about, you know, how they changed the D-pad. I think I prefer the old one better, but this new D-pad is still very nice. Graphical capabilities of the systems. The graphics are amazing. Now, call me crazy, but Uncharted really didn't blow me away that much. What really impressed me was Wipeout 2048. It's 48, right? Yeah. I played that game. That game was amazing. That game is beautiful. Of course, it doesn't look, you know, anywhere as good as Wipeout HD on the PS3, which I also have. Love that game. But, you know, it's a Vita. You know, it's a handheld. Very, very impressive graphics for a handheld. And I guess the reason why Uncharted really didn't impress me that much is because, you know, I don't know. I guess it's just because I've been spoiled by, you know, Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3. I'm guessing. But, yeah. Let's see, anything else I want to talk about? Like, honestly, I didn't have that much time. I probably spent like 20 minutes in there because I didn't want to be a douchebag and, you know, not let other people play the Vita. But yeah, I got to play Mod Nation Racers, which fuck that game. I played Uncharted and I played Wipeout. And then there's something else I did, but yeah, those are 3 games I played. You know, so far, I'm really impressed with the system, other than the small analog sticks and the small face buttons. Those are pretty much the only thing I'm not liking about the Vita right now. You know, of course, the, you know, overpriced memory card is going to be a problem, but I'm just, you know, giving impressions of the actual system. You know, I'm not taking in factors, you know, outside, you know, external factors. I'm just talking about the system right now. But yeah, so far, you know, I'm really impressed with the system. I think it has a lot of potential. Now, for those of you talking about the Vita is doomed, you know, yada, 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 you know, don't jump to conclusions, you know, because that's exactly what the Sony fanboys said about the 3DS, and look how that turned out. 3DS is doing just fine. Actually, it's doing better than fine. It's the fastest selling handheld in history, period. It's outselling the 3DS, and it's even outselling the Wii, and it's even outselling the PS2. You know, so don't be those Sony fanboys, you know. Don't say the Vita is doomed. Give it some time. Things can get turned around, you know? Just give it some time. I think it's going to be fine. There's this rumor that developers are leaving the Vita and moving their support to the 3DS. You know, a couple of developers did that during the, you know, the early 3DS days too. So, you know, don't try to make too big of a deal of that. Although I do believe the rumor, and I do think it's, you know, quite a few devs. I don't think it's going to be necessarily detrimental, you know, to the Vita. So, you know, just like give it a year, you know, or so, I think the Vita is really going to kick off. But those are my impressions. If you haven't checked out the Vita, go to your GameStop. They should have one hooked up. You know, free access. Anybody can access it. You know, go check it out. That's it for my impressions. I'll see you guys later.